OpenAI's new AI agent builder just destroyed N8N, since it can be used to build workflows with multiple MCP tools through a simple drag and drop interface, and it's also completely free, which would make using N8N a complete waste of time and money if you can build similar automations faster and cheaper with a simpler and more beginner-friendly interface. So as someone that spends hours every day building N8N workflows and has made multiple videos showing you how to do the exact same, I'm going to put OpenAI's new agent builder to the test by comparing the workflows I can build with it with the equivalent ones that I can build with N8N. And at the end of the video, I will give you my final opinion and let you know whether you should be switching over or not. But before that, let's build some workflows. Now, the first thing that we have to do is to access OpenAI's agent builder, which you cannot do by the usual ChatGPT interface, is go over to platform.openai/agent builder, which I will leave a link for in the description below. And then you simply have to come over here and click on Open Agent Builder. And then this is going to open up this interface where you can, and then you simply have to come over here and click on Open Agent Builder. And then this is going to open up this interface where you can see all the workflows that you have created. As you can see, I have only created one workflow over here to test it. But for this video, let's come over here and create a brand new workflow. And boom, this is the interface of the agent builder, and as you can see, it does look very clean, and I do gotta admit, it does look better than N8N, but how the interface looks is not the important thing. What's really important is what you can actually build with it. As you can see over here, we already have two nodes. First, we have the start node, which is basically the equivalent of a trigger in N8N, which determines how we're going to start a workflow. And as you can see over here, when I click it, it opens up this tab over here to the right, where I can come over here and add in any variable that I want, just like you can do in N8N. I can add in a string, I can add in a number, a boolean, an object, and a list. And how I'm able to add all of these things is by coming over here and giving a name to this value. For example, I can say text, and then you also have the option to give a default value for that parameter if you want. Now, I don't really want the default value, so we'll leave it empty, and then I simply have to come over here and click on save. And boom, we successfully managed to set up our trigger. Now, as you can see, our trigger is connected to an AI agent node, which is also the first node that we can see over here in the top. So what this node does is it basically is an AI agent, just like we have an AI agent in N8N. And as you can see over here, we have an instructions box where we basically need to tell our AI agent exactly what we want it to do. And just to show you the difference, if I go over to N8N and I add in a trigger, for example, let's say we add in a chat message trigger, so it is similar to the one that I have in a workflow in the agent builder. And then if I come over here and search for AI agent and I simply select the node, you can see that this kinda does look similar if I actually come over here and change this from connect to chat trigger node to define below. Because over here we do have a user message where we can basically explain and give instructions to our AI agent for exactly what we wanted to do. But in N8N, we also have the option to come over here and add in a system message, which is basically us telling our AI agent how it needs to act in the backend, while over here in the user message is the place where we give it all the data that we want it to have access to. So you can see how this agent over here is basically a simplified version of the N8N agent. But let's also go and look into all of the other settings to see if it is actually any good. Now, as you can see over here, we have the option to include chat history, which means that it's going to remember previous outputs from agent nodes and it's going to take them into account, which is a very useful feature, I might add. Then over here in the model, we can choose any of the OpenAI models, which is not ideal, guys, because with N8N, we basically have the option to come over here and add in any of the big LLM models that we want. We can add in Claude, we can add in Gemini, DeepSeek, Grok, Ollama, etc, etc. We can basically add in any model we want. While with OpenAI's agent builder, we only have access to the GPT models, which is to be expected since this is an OpenAI product. But we're losing on some of the customizability that we would have with an AI agent in N8N. So if that's a deal breaker to you, then you will need to use N8N if you want to use a different model. But let's say, for example, I come over here and select GPT-5. As you can see, I can also select its reasoning effort. So if I wanted to reason a lot, I could come over here and select hi, which is going to make it reason more before it gives me any response. And then over here we also have the option to give it access to tools. So if I come over here and click on the plus icon, we can see we can give it access to ChatKit, which is basically a client tool. Then we can also give it access to MCP service, which is one very powerful feature that this AI agent builder has, and we are going to cover it in a bit. Then we also have the option to give it access to file sets, which we're going to cover in just a moment as well, because right now I want to cover the web sets functionality. Because if we actually click on it, this basically gives us the option to make our AI agent search the web, which is a very useful feature. And we can also over here specify if we wanted to search only specific websites. For example, if we wanted very credible sources, we could only tell it, oh, only search Wikipedia, for example. And then we can also select the specific country, region, city, time zone, etc. for the results that we want to get, which is a very useful feature that N8N doesn't actually offer. So that's a very big plus over here. But if we come back over here in the tools, because I told you before, we're going to cover the file search tool, which as you can also see, it is also available over here. So if I actually come over here and click it, you can see that I can basically come over here and upload any files from my computer, and this agent is going to turn them into a vector store where we will basically then be able to chat with the information that is inside these files. So for example, if I click on upload and I come over here and upload this random file that I have over here, then I come over here and give it a name. Let me call it Damien, for example, and then I can also come over here in the advanced options and also select the chunk size of the tokens if I actually want, and the chunk overlap. But if I'm gonna be honest, these are very advanced options. You don't really need to actually configure them at all. I think they're perfectly fine exactly as they are. And then you come over here, you click on attach. Then we will be able to see that our agent over here has access to the vector that we just created, which means that if I actually come over here and I click on the preview button, which is basically going to run our workflow over here, I will be able to come over here and chat with a file we just uploaded over in a vector store. So I could say, for example, what is inside our file, and then if I click on enter, then the agent is going to run, it's going to look inside the file we just uploaded over as a vector store, and it's going to give us information about what is inside this file. Now this is actually a file that I have for the power in my house, that's why you see Greek text over here, but I think you get the point. You can basically input a file inside the vector store, and then you can basically chat with it, ask the AI whatever you want about it, and it's going to return you an accurate answer. Which to do with N8N, we would have to come over here, obviously add in a model first, and then we would actually have to come over here in the tools and add in an actual vector database. It could be Supabase vector store, it could be Pinecone, it could be whatever you want, which actually, as you can see, does have a pretty complex setup, guys. We will need to set up this node, then we would also need to come over here and add in an embedding. We would choose OpenAI, for example, and then after we set up everything, we would also need to go over to supabase.com, create our vector store there, and create all the columns, and then we would be able to come over here and match them with our Supabase vector store, which is a process that, even if you know how to do it, actually takes you like 10 minutes or so. While with OpenAI's agent builder, we basically managed to do it in like 3 seconds, which is a very big plus. And now I want to talk to you a little bit about the next tool and the most important tool that OpenAI's agent has access to, which is actually the MCP server, which you can also see over here in the tools. Because if we actually click on this and we actually bring this over as a separate tool, then what you can do if you click on it is, as you can see, we have this add button over here, which if we come and we click, we can see a bunch of MCP servers that we can actually connect to. And they are sorted by the ones that are added by OpenAI, which are basically the Google servers and a bunch of other more, and some by other developers. But the problem with these guys is that they are super limited, as you can see. These are all the tools that we have access to, and they're like not even 20 tools, which means that the automations that we're going to be able to build with OpenAI's agent builder are going to be very limited. And especially with the tools that exist over here, like the automations that I usually tend to build, I simply could not build them with the tools that we have over here. The only good thing is that they have access to Zapier's MCP server, which means that we can come over here, click on Zapier, and actually enter in our Zapier API key and connect to another AI automation platform, which is Zapier, and then build a workflow from there, which, if I'm going to be honest, is pointless, because we can just use Zapier from the start and not have to build the start and end of our automation over in OpenAI's agent builder. So I think that this is by far the most limiting factor of this tool, because it simply doesn't have access to many tools. Contrast that with N8N, if I come over here and click on tools, I can keep scrolling down like for days. You can see N8N has access to so many tools, which are actually thousands, which means that you can basically build whatever you want and whatever you can imagine. And as you can see, I keep going, like I keep scrolling and it's not going to end. While OpenAI's agent builder does not even have access to 20. So that is by far its biggest limiting factor that I do think it is actually going to improve in the future where they keep adding more tools. But for the current moment, it's simply very limited with the tools that it has access to. But now let's also come over here and look a little bit about the logic tools that it has, because as you can see, we have access to a basic if or else node where we can simply come over here and configure in the usual way. We can say if a certain parameter that we can type in over here equals some other parameter, then this is going to be true and we can move on with the workflow from over here. Or if this is false, this is going to trigger the else function and we're going to move forward with this branch over here. I think this is pretty standard. I don't think there's much to explain over here. And then what I also want to show you is the while function that they have, which is basically a loop, just like we have in N8N, where basically everything that comes over here inside this loop is going to keep looping until the expression that we create over here is actually finished. So let's say we want this to stop looping when this actually reaches the number 5. We would simply type in this, which equals 5, and this node over here will keep looping till the response that it gave was the number 5, which in N8N you can do with a pretty similar way. You simply come over here and you search for the loop function, and basically how you configure this is any node that replaces this replacement node. So let's say for example we wanted to use a Google Sheet node over here, and let's say we wanted to update a row. All we would have to do is take this and bring this back over here in the loop, and this would keep looping till all the rows were updated inside a Google Sheet. So this kinda does work the same way, guys. And with the if node, just to show you how it also works in N8N, you simply come over here, you search for an if node, and what you can do over here is basically set up a value over here. So you can say if a schema that is called hello, for example, is equal to hello, and we execute the step, then this would be true. So we would be able to move over here with a true branch of our automation. While if this was false, then this would come over here in the false branch, and we would be able to move on with the false branch of our automation. So alright, now let's go and cover the next that they give us access to, which is the user approval tool, which is a pretty interesting tool, but the vast majority of the time you're not really going to use it, because this is basically a human in the loop tool, which what this does is it simply waits for human approval. So then the human is to see the result that the workflow has given, and he can either approve it or reject it. If he approves it, then the workflow is going to continue from this branch over here, while if he rejects it, then it's going to continue from this branch over here, which what it usually happens is you bring this all the way over here to the start, so it runs again and gives a different response. So then the human can either go and approve it if it is good this time, or if it is still bad, then it can come back over here and rerun till the human actually likes the response that the workflow gives. And now let's also cover the two data nodes over here. The first one is the transform one, which what that means, let me also come over here and connect it over here in the user approval. And what this does is it basically allows you to transform data. So for example, if you had a specific type of data and you wanted to transform it to a different one, then you can do it from inside this node. So for example, let's say you have a value that's called result and you want to transform it and make it say result 2. Well, you would have to simply come over here and type in that, and then when the workflow run, it would actually be transformed. And now it's time we actually cover the last tool that the AI agent builder gives us access to, which is the set state tool, which what it does is it basically allows us to set brand new variables, which we can do by coming over here and assigning a value, and then simply coming over here, clicking on add variable, and we can add in a brand new variable over here if we actually want. So we can then take this variable and use it in the continuation of our workflow. And just so you see how you can do these functions with N8N, you can basically do both of them with the set node or the edit fields node. All you have to do is to simply come over here. If you want to send a brand new value, you simply can come over here, give it a name, call it value, and then input what you want to have inside it. For example, it could say hello. And if you want it to transform an already existing value, you simply have to come over here, type in or drag and drop in the schema. Let's say the schema was called value, and then you simply have to come over here and set up and input what this new value is going to be. It could be hello too, for example. So that's how you can do both of these functions in N8N. And then once you're finished with your automation, you can simply come over here and click on the preview button, and then you would be able to test it from over here to see if it is actually working correctly. And you also have the option to evaluate your workflow, which you can do by coming over here and clicking on evaluate, which what this does is basically evaluate your workflow for you using AI. And if you have a problem, you can come over here and describe the specific problem you have, and all you have to do is simply come over here and describe the test that you want it to go through in order for you to be able to see if it is actually working correctly or not, which is a pretty useful feature, I might add, that N8N currently doesn't have. And then once you're done and you finish evaluating your automation and you know it is good to go, all you have to do is to simply come over here and click on publish. Then you can give this a name. Let me name it my workflow, and then simply come over here and click on publish. And boom, this workflow was published, which means that you can actually use it in live scenarios right now. And you can do this by using the workflow ID, which you can actually trigger by doing an API call, because this is basically an API key over here. Or you can also use some custom code over here in the agents SDK, which is kind of pretty complex, so I definitely wouldn't advise you to do it. If you want to use this, simply use it either with an API call or add this to an existing domain, and then you can use it from there. So this is everything you need to know about OpenAI's Agent Builder. And if you're asking my personal opinion, do I think that it can replace N8N? No, I definitely don't think so, simply because it doesn't have many tools and it's very limited in that regard. But comparing it to N8N is obviously not fair, since N8N has been created 6 years ago in 2019. Well, this AI Agent Builder was just created right now, so I definitely do think that in the future they will severely improve this and they're going to add in more tools, and once they do, it might be a good alternative to N8N. But currently, at the time of this recording, this definitely cannot replace N8N. I would say it is only useful for very simple automations for people that have no technical skills to create very simple automations if they don't know how to use N8N and they think that it is too hard to learn. But if you're just starting out learning automation, or you already know how to use N8N, I would definitely advise you keep learning N8N, if I'm gonna be honest, because OpenAI's Agent Builder is not even close to the level that N8N is, at least at the moment of this recording. Or at least that is my personal opinion. Now if you want to learn more about N8N and how to build and sell AI automations, you can click the link in my description and come and check out my school community, in which I show you how to master N8N with a full N8N course that I have over here, taking you from a beginner all the way to a pretty advanced user. And then I basically tell you exactly how you can monetize it with multiple different methods. And I just created a 100-day roadmap, which is meant to get you your first paying AI and automation customer. And if you follow this program and you don't actually manage to get your first paying customer, I'm going to give you all of your money back, since I'm this certain that this program is almost guaranteed to land you your first paying customer if you actually follow it step by step. So if you would be interested in that, along with getting access to all the other content that I have inside my community, plus getting access to a community of more than 160 members that are interested in AI and most importantly making money with it, make sure you click the link in the description and you come and check out my school community, and I will be waiting for you inside. But also YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy this video, in which I show you a different app that actually did destroy N8N. So make sure you go and watch that next, and I will see you over there.